lovers. I am so blessed and honored to be in a position to share, tools and tips and tricks that have the potential to heal and to bring you to a place of full sexual embodiment. And one of the tools that I absolutely love and have been using for the better part of a decade are crystal yoni products, including pleasure wands and yoni eggs. And I was so excited to recently come across a brand called Wands, Waands. I met the founder here in Austin and I absolutely loved who she was. I love getting to know the people behind the products that I like to use. And I just loved her mission to really support women and men to explore, celebrate, and honor their sexuality. I felt this transmission of slow, sensual seduction in all of who she was and all that she brought to the world. So I went ahead and gave it a try. I purchased a blue quartz Emerita wand, and the Emerita wand is great because it has this like cool bulby end on it, which is designed for G-spot and cervical stimulation, but can also be used for prostate stimulation. So it's great for men and women and can even be used between partners. So I'm so honored to have built this relationship with her and to be able to offer you guys an amazing discount code. So if you use the code LEOLA, Leola, that will give you 15% off all products. And the website is wands.com, Waands.com. And we'll go ahead and link that in the show notes as well for you. So thank you so much for listening. And also you're welcome for the inevitable pleasure and healing and ecstasy that is coming your way with these products. Let's dive into the episode. Welcome to Talk Tantra to Me. It is such an honor to be holding space for this divine knowledge to make its way into your ears and lifestyle. Today on the pod, we have Jolie Dawn, who is an author and marketing coach, and she is also a friend of mine. So I met Jolie through a group of sisters here in Austin. We've got like the greatest group of women just like all landing in this incredible city. And it was at Sophia's house, which Sophia has been on the pod as well a couple of times. And I remember the first time I met you, we were doing like this little potluck and you brought lobster tails, which I just feel like is such an epic thing to bring to a potluck. Like what a way to just like, I think I like got some like stupid bread from like H-E-B like on my way over, and Jolie rocks up with lobster tails and they were amazing and so delicious, and it just is you, like you're amazing and so delicious, and it was the perfect introduction. So thank you for being here. Also want to just plug in as well that I had the opportunity to this isn't our first collaboration. I was in your Dare to Prosper challenge as a guest speaker, and that was incredible and was also really activating for me, and I appreciate that. So I'm excited to welcome you into the Talk Tantra to Me space. So thank you for being here. Why don't you tell us a bit more about how you came on to this path?
It's such an honor to be here. Usually we do podcasts just over Zoom, and getting to be here in Austin, Texas, in your vibe, in your beautiful office just feels like such a sweet invite.
Yeah.
And every time we've gotten together, we can talk and talk for hours, and having this recorded and getting to share this wisdom is so meaningful. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who's listening too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jolie Dawn, I started in the coaching industry just over a decade ago when I was 23 years old. I just turned 34. And it started for me as a fascination. I felt like I wanted to chronicle and share the discoveries of my rapid spiritual awakening that I had around age 21, 22.
Yeah.
And a major life event happened when I was 20 years old that forever shaped me on planet Earth. And it was so big in my system, and it just rocked my world so to the core. And I'll share, it was at 20 years old, my dad made the very permanent decision to take his life after losing a large sum of money in the 2008 economic collapse.
Yeah.
And I inherited a caretaking role of my mother, and it was such a hard thing to mentally process. The betrayal, the letdown, the heartache, the grief. It was so much more than my 20-year-old brain knew how to do at the time. And I did what I knew how to do, coping mechanisms and strategies like drinking and going out with my friends and partying like a crazy person. And just, I could see where that path was taking me, and I could predict the future. And by the grace of God, I found so many things at the same time that contributed to me finding myself, seeing the path that I wanted for my life. And that included transcendental meditation. It included Eastern philosophy, meditation, Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, and just throwing myself into personal development rooms and leadership training to discover who I was at a core essence.
Yeah. And one of the things that I love about your approach to all of this is that it's super holistic and tantric in that way, and that it is including this piece on embodiment as well as sexuality. And a lot of your work, my perception of your work, is that it is deeply related to womb in terms of both receiving as well as creating. And as we know, it's been mentioned on the podcast before as well, the energy of sex and money are so deeply intertwined. They're mirrors for one another. And I'd love to chat about that part of your journey as well, the piece on healing your sexuality and how that related to you coming into the energy of prosperity.
I had such deep wounds around scarcity as a child, seeing both of my parents be educated high earners, but also having a gambling addiction, and both of them struggling with addiction. And I just grew up in this feast or famine environment where I just had so much fear around money and so many stories around what it meant to be an affluent person. And I genuinely believed that my only ticket to having a prosperous life was having a successful husband. And I took that route and I took that path for myself. And at 21, I met a very successful older man. He was 12 years my senior. He was my boss at the time in a marketing and sales company. And he was light years beyond me in every stage of development, emotional development, leadership, entrepreneurship, money, connections. And when I was 25, we realized that we didn't have the sexual piece. We just didn't have that thing figured out. And we had a very alternative relationship style where we had sexual experiences by inviting women into our relationship, and that was enough for us for a long period of time to keep the sex exciting and interesting. He was such a beautiful man. He took such great care of me, and part of my dharma and soul path in this life was to figure it out for myself. So when we broke up when I was 25, I was asking really big questions of life. Really big questions. I remember my intentions for God sounded more like demands, like loud screams and demands. I felt so pent up. You know that feeling when your sexuality is pent up and you're like, oh, like what is this? And embodied women trigger you, sexual women trigger you. I'd go to parties where these Burning Man women would be in their little skirts and their adornments. And I'm like, she is so annoying. So much judgment. Because I wanted to be here and I believed I couldn't. And I got invited. I had already started in the coaching industry, writing books and doing live events in San Diego. That started while still in that relationship, but I hadn't really found my monetization path in a way that could support my life, and especially not the lifestyle I had gotten accustomed to in this relationship. So I had $6,000 to my name. I had it locked away in a CD. The intention for this money was like my rainy day money. If something were to happen in a medical emergency or my car broke down, like this was the type of money that like was locked away to not be touched. And in San Diego, there was this male, female practitioner that used to do these live events around sexual healing, and I would attend them and they would make the offer. And I was always like, it wasn't confronting for me when they were talking about the sexual healing work because it was so far out of my realm of being able to afford it. So I was like, cool, I'm supporting this. I love that other women are healing. I love learning from them. And like maybe one day far away in the future when I'm a successful businesswoman, then I'll be able to invest. And what this couple was doing was hands-on sexual healing. And this couple was not in a romantic dynamic. They're business partners.
Yeah.
And they would do this healing sessions in series with women wanting to heal from sexual trauma or just awaken more of their sexual vitality. And I was sitting in the room. I was 25 years old. And I was feeling it in my body extra this time. They used to do monthly events in person. And this time I was like, oh, I need this. The stirring in my soul started happening. I need this. And they said, you know, our package is usually $12,000, but tonight only, we're actually doing it for $6,000.
Wow. Synchronistic.
$6,000 was every dollar that I had, minus maybe a few $100s in my checking account for groceries and whatnot. And it opened up a possibility of like, I actually could afford this.
Yeah.
It would be every dollar of the savings that I have, but it's possible. And just letting in the possibility into my body, my spirit came through and said, you are doing this.
Wow.
It was the most terrifying moment, Leola, because I was like, oh my gosh, I want this. Can I have it? It's just one of those big decisions in life where you're really grappling with it.
Yeah.
And I went to the back of the room and I said, the next step was a discovery call. So I didn't have to put down the money right then. I said, I want to talk to you guys and I want to do this. Ooh, I was scared. I was triggered. I was nervous. I was questioning myself, but I did it. I chose it and I invested in myself.
Yeah. I love hearing you speak about all of this in that I feel it in my body. Like I feel your journey and the excitement, and it's kind of warm in here actually. And like, I'm getting goosebumps. It's amazing. So, and I think it's just also because I'm so intimately connected to this work and I know the transformation that's available, and hearing about it from someone such as yourself that, you know, I perceive as just powerful and successful. And I work with lots of powerful and successful people in general because this work is so intimate and transformative and intense. It does often come with a investment. But there's not so many people that go from one into the other and are willing to talk about it so openly and so vulnerably. So I just really want to honor you for being willing to chat about this and to have this conversation. You know, at our retreats, it's always this juggling of like who's willing to be in the photos and who's not. And most people aren't. And I totally get it because of the way that our society is. You know, I had to go through my own coming out process that was really vulnerable and difficult. So I'm here with everyone that gets to be a little bit more cautious about how they reveal themselves in this way. And someone such as yourself that has built a life that is really autonomous, like you're very much on your own terms, and you've built this incredible business that really is in some ways a result of having made investments like this, and to pay it forward by sharing your story. Just thank you for that. And what happened next?
Oh my gosh, it was such a deep journey from coming from a deeply religious background where sex was the ultimate sin in my family culture, to then driving to my first appointment. So this sexual healing program, which thinking back now, I got a deal for $6,000. Like, wow, what I received. Best investment of my life. I got myself back. So it was 6 3-hour sessions, so 18 hours, with the focus on hands-on healing on the G-spot.
Yeah.
So internal massage, bringing the woman on the table, me in this instance, bringing me on the table into ecstatic states of bliss and awakening the female waters, the female ejaculatory system, aka called squirting, which I realized later after I felt that mechanism in my body. I'm like, oh, I think that happened before. Like once when I was on top in college, I totally thought I peed on him and quickly cleaned it up. I'm like, sorry, dude, I peed on you. But actually, it's a completely different mechanism.
Yeah.
So I realized I had done it maybe once or twice before. I thought it was something else, but then got to awaken those waters of my body. And the whole intention of this work, and actually they're not doing it anymore. People have asked me, are they doing it? And they've disbanded. So I don't have a referral for anybody. However, there are plenty of highly trained sexological body workers out there that are offering incredible work. But the the methodology focusing on the G-spot was basically reprogramming the memory sponge of the G-spot. We have the G-spot, we have the cervix, and it remembers because the body remembers. We all know this about how the body keeps score. And being able to bring the body into ecstatic states of bliss in a safe environment while also doing Reiki, energy healing, and unconscious reprogramming through programming beliefs. Coming from a really colorful sexual past, Leola, oh my goodness, I was in so much rebellion around the rules on my sexuality. I feel like part of the cosmic play of my life being this character of Jolie Dawn was like, I was born on 6/9, so I was born in my favorite sexual position. I love
oh my God.
giving and receiving at the same time. I think it's fantastic. I was born on 6/9. And I've always been a wild sexual creature, and it was the number one thing I wasn't allowed to be in my family.
Yeah.
And so when I started drinking when I was 13, it came out in really convoluted ways. And when you combine a bunch of young kids that don't know consent and boundaries with being shit-faced drunk, I got into a lot of situations that in the light of day, in a sober environment, I wouldn't have gotten myself into those situations. I wouldn't have said yes to those things. I had a lot to forgive myself for.
Yeah. Yeah, my story is pretty much the exact same in that regard, that it was feeling so much of my expression wasn't talked about or wasn't allowed to be talked about. I wasn't allowed to really ask questions about my body and what was changing, and there was so much shame and embarrassment in that. So my reaction was, well, I'm just going to figure it out for myself and go out into the world and explore. And that created a lot of dangerous situations that resulted in, non-consensual touch, sexual assault, also just like more trauma. I mean, just all sorts of silly things and not so silly things, more serious things. And at the same time, that was the play, that was the contract. And I'm grateful for all of that. I want to double click on one thing as well. You had mentioned, are there other people doing this work? People are asking for referrals, etc. I have a couple, so I'm just going to drop them here. So Rena Trevi is actually here in Austin. She's been on the podcast. She works with women. Highly recommend her. And then this is specifically for like yoni work. Justin Gottlieb, who is my co-facilitator for the Tantra Love Retreat, he does as well. Wow. And they're both really great. So if people are interested, go to those resources. I'll also say Sacred Arrows is a website that has lots of different practitioners. sacredarrows.com, I think, is the full website. But there is like the caveat of being very discerning when looking for practitioners in this space, because there isn't really like real certification. There's no board. There's like no. And so my first time going to a practitioner, he actually crossed my boundaries, like totally. And that's the whole story is on the podcast as well. But being discerning, I would say, is really important. So important. And it sounds like you had been going into these people's space like repeatedly. And that's something that I suggest as well. Before getting undressed and doing this hands-on body work with an individual, work with them in other ways first and see, what their integrity is and build that relationship.
Yeah, because the point is healing, not re-traumatizing. That was the last thing my sensitive, sweet little body needed at 25 was any re-traumatizing.
Yeah.
So taking that decision slowly. Very good advice. Yeah, and I'm just, it pushed my edge in every way imaginable, what I was processing in my mind and the ego death. And oh my gosh, I was one of those girls that when I first heard what Brazilian waxing was, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I need to wrap my head around this. You like show your pussy to somebody who's going to wax you. Like, I was so modest and so shy. And I still had those things as a part of me. Like, I cannot believe the dynamic of this, where I'm going to lay down and receive and be turned on, where it's completely one-sided and clinical. There is no me kissing. There's no warming up. There is no love exchange here. It is a clinical healing setting, but I'm also in the height of my sexual pleasure. It's a really interesting thing to wrap your head around, especially it's more so I would get it now, but at 25, I was like, this is so confusing and I get it, but kind of just barely, but I know that I need this. And I will tell you that $6,000 was the most important investment I've ever made in myself.
Wow. That says a lot.
because I've made lots of investments in myself, and I've built quite an extraordinary life and business. And when I think back to the foundational building block and what that did for me was so much release and healing, like you, so much unconsensual touch. The year was like, 2004, 2007. As elder millennials, we weren't talking about consent yet. It was just it was like kind of a free for all. I was so attached to my virginity, Leola, as like a brand, I will be valuable to a husband. And at 20 years old, I had not like technically lost my virginity yet, like penetration wise. And I lost my virginity thinking this guy had his fingers in me, and it wasn't. That was my losing my virginity. Like no love, accidental, oopsie doodle, and just the mental fuckery of that.
That's so fucked. And that's not an uncommon.
And he's over here like, oh, I thought the next step was me putting my cock in you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, because I have a whole brand and identity right now where I'm being a virgin. He's just like, oh, after we do this, he's just going through his motions. He's not like intending to hurt me. It's just that one big
kerfuffle.
Confused kerfuffle.
Yeah. And I really appreciate the way that you even address that as well in this space of zooming out and seeing the holistic perspective of sexuality in that time. Because I think it could be really easy to just be like, this fucking dude raped me, basically. And at the end of the day, it's like, he doesn't fucking know what he's doing. He hasn't been taught how to ask for consent. He's just going through his motions. You're really not sure what's happening either. And so just taking that responsibility and recognizing like, look, we're all doing our best here, and our best gets to be a lot better. And you went out and found the answers for that.
Yeah. And what I got from that was deep healing around some patterns I had been playing out. And then also I was just wildly turned on about life. I'd awakened my kundalini, I'd awakened my waters and my sensual self-touch practice. And I learned sex magic manifestation, where I was bringing the visions of my business into my self-pleasure practice. And that was really when my life started taking off. That's when I hit 6 figures in my business. Shortly after, I hit multiple 6 figures. That's when the book started. It's just all the things on the external in the realm of quote unquote success started happening for me because it was happening within myself first.
Yeah.
That sacral chakra, which is the seed of creation, when that is flowing and you're connected. And I was excited. I was so turned on about my life of being a single woman and having these ideas and wanting to see them come to life. And I was just turned on in every single way, when I was just so scared to be myself before. It was radical for me.
Turned on by life. That's the magic of this work, that it's like you realize that this energy, we've trapped it in this illusion of dark rooms at night, shame. Right? And once you open yourself up to being in the light of day, in that energy, it starts to touch every part of your life. It was very similar for me. Like once I started healing my relationship to my sexuality, it wasn't like, oh, my sex got better. It was like my friendships got better. I healed my relationship with my family. I started making actual money. My home, like the physical manifestation of my life, began to become a greater representation of who I really am and choose to be in the world. And it's something that people don't really get until they actually experience it. And maybe they have like an inkling of what's possible, and that's why we're here and they're listening to this episode. I don't know, but it's really powerful shit.
It reminds me of the first time I saw you. I was like, this woman is so in her body. And I just appreciate being around that, because it will always be a role model for me. Somebody who's embodied in their sensuality and in their sex. And so I see you as that woman. And it's no surprise to me, the level of leadership that you've taken on, and people who look up to you, because you've taken that path for yourself and you live it from an authentic place.
Totally. It's so sweet. Yeah. It's so sweet. And it is interesting though, because I really resonate with what you had said earlier about in the past, seeing women that were in their embodiment, seeing women that were sexually expressed for themselves really, and being super triggered by that. And I still have this now. Like I even had a client that recently told me that she unfollowed me on Instagram because my expression was actually triggering in that way. And I'm fully supporting her in creating that spaciousness to rebuild her own relationship to herself in this time. But how incredible is it to come to the other side and choose inspiration rather than, comparison?
Yeah, because, you would have, at my 25-year-old pre this work, I would have seen a woman like you and it would have been crippled in jealousy. Because jealousy is rooted in insecurity. And insecurity is wanting something I believe that I can't have.
Yeah.
So you're mirroring for me this liberation and this sexiness and this aliveness. And I'm over here saying, I want that so bad and I can't have it. Why can she have it? I can't have it. So now I'm collapsing in on myself and all of a sudden I can't handle you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've also had that experience with women that are making lots of money as well. And like, that's the flip side of it. Like women that are just like powerhouses and like they have it all. And it's like, well, and I had that experience a few years ago where I chose to distance myself from one of those women. And now she's a woman that like I ravenously engage with her content because I choose to see it a different way, if that makes sense.
And
so
that's the gift of jealousy. If you can be with it and be like, that woman really fucking triggers me.
I wonder why.
What does she represent that I desire? And it's a really incredible, magical way to get connected to our desires because it'll show you what you actually want.
Yeah. And that in of itself is such a gift to really get clear on what do I actually really want? Because oftentimes I find that we think that we know what we want. And it often is based on what we have evidence for, whether it's what we have evidence for having already achieved in our own lives or what we see other people have. But wouldn't it be interesting if instead of figuring out what you want based on what other people have, you dreamed the bigger dream of like, if I could actually create by taking maybe little pieces of things I have evidence for, but actually something that is maybe not even like alive in this world yet, or at least isn't alive in the mainstream. That's a really powerful vision. And I see that as something that you create you've created for yourself and you create for women as well. And you kind of share that path, especially with the prosperity piece.
Yeah, because prosperity and scarcity was such a huge part of my story. I had such limiting beliefs that were so deep-seated that I didn't even see them as limiting beliefs. I just thought that was my reality. I'm a woman that cannot earn money. I am a woman that needs to rely on others. I am a woman that I'm not from prosperity and a lineage of money, so I'll never have it for myself. And when I created the Dare to Prosper Challenge in 2019, I've been working with an underground mentor and had done deep work on the psychic field, hypnosis, because that's, if we really want change in the external, we have to work on the internal. That's really the simple formula. And over 10,000 people have done my meditations, and it's just women specifically, and it's grown like wildfire around the world. And there's no way I could have created that much change and impact and that much love and connection and community if I hadn't seen myself as a woman that could do something that big.
They say you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And this is something that I really, really resonate with. And as I've invested in living a tantric lifestyle, my relationships have evolved and become so much more juicy and liberating. And I believe that this is something that everyone deserves. However, finding these people can be a little bit challenging at first. And so it is my mission to create more spaces for people to find individuals that are resonant with the tantric lifestyle, that are really resonant with you, the listener, the person who is investing their time into living a life that is expansive and liberating. So with that, I am committed to creating more and more safe spaces for people to discover their desires and practice their boundaries, to connect in community, to celebrate and to grow together so that we can all step into a more authentic version of ourselves and experience truly unconditional love. So we have Tantra retreats for men, women, couples, singles. We also have female-only retreats just for the ladies stepping into their divine feminine. We have play parties. We have Tantra workshops, Tantra yoga, women's circles. We've got all kinds of really powerful in-person events. You can find all the details at www.talktantratome.com /events. You can also just go to talktantratome.com and click the events tab to find out about all the latest and the greatest. And if you're wanting me all to yourself, I can't blame you. I also host private retreats for both individuals and couples. Those are one-on-one. You get me all to yourself. And I'm available for private Tantra workshops and performances. And this is great for events like your birthday or maybe a bachelorette party or bachelor weekend. We can talk and create something that will be extra special just for you. So I cannot wait to connect with you in real life. But for now, thanks so much for your patience with this brief interruption, and let's get back to the episode. Yeah, I'd love to chat a little bit more about like, what do you do now? Like what are your creations? How is this showing up in the world today for women to get a better understanding of like how this journey supported? And like, I want people to understand, like, you're a big fucking deal. That's how I feel.
Thank you. So I'm all about prosperity in a practical sense. So first, women oftentimes study with me the energetics, and then we do the practical, how to set up a revenue machine that's aligned with your soul purpose, that's contributing to the healing of the planet. I work with women who feel a deep calling to bring more light and healing and love in every way, sexuality, psychic work, nutrition, healing of all kinds. And we help them, I come from a marketing background, sales background, internet marketing, and I help them get strategic funnels live and set up in a way that actually works and converts so that they can pay themselves sustainably and do their work in the world.
Yeah, amazing. Beautiful. And there's so many different ways to work with you, which we will link in the notes so people can find you and get in touch with you and dare to prosper. Mm-hmm. And I love to shift into speaking a little bit more about like what you want and what you desire from life now. Like, what's your next step and how are you opening to that?
Gosh, it's been such a healing journey. It never ends, does it, Leola?
No, it doesn't.
We out here in the density of Earth School, learning it day by day. Well, I just recently had a birthday. I just turned 34.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Feels good. That like turning of a new season and discovering who I am at this age. Birthdays are always very significant for me in that way. And I'm so clear about my desire, about what I'm calling in is a husband and a family. Having lost both of my parents in my 20s, my heart yearns to create a family and belong to a family. So that's my manifestation. I don't know if you can see my nails right now, but I painted this one sparkly.
She did. That's her ring finger.
My ring finger. And to be honest, you and Andrew are just such a role model couple for me. Mostly because when I'm around you two, the love is so palpable, the polarity. He loves you so much.
He does.
You love him so much.
I do.
And it just shows me evidence of like two people finding each other. Quirky, irreverent. Y'all are weird as fuck.
We are.
Your house is colorful and unique. And it's just like, they were meant for each other. That they were just,
yeah.
And I asked you two in the pool at Sophia's house, I was like, is it true that when you find your person, it just feels different? He's like 100%.
Yeah, that was a really good Andrew. Like, what am I trying to say? The way you said 100% was exactly like you would say it. I felt it. Impersonation. Yeah. Yeah, Andrew is so special and I feel so fortunate, and he has really expanded my capacity to receive a lot, and I feel so fucking grateful. Like I just got back from a trip, and so coming back into the energy of us was just so nourishing, and it was like such a moment of like, oh fuck yeah, like I have this life, this is dope. The past couple of days we both work from home, which is great, but we have like, he has the upper unit, I'm in the main house, so we have this separation as well. It's kind of hot, but I've made him I've made like 3 meals a day for us the past couple of days, and it's been so amazing. And at the same time, I've been able to like do my own business stuff, and I'm going through a little bit of a transition with things and reformatting, but it's really fun to be like, oh, here's a deposit for a retreat here, and then like, but then be like cooking, and I'm just like, we were talking today at lunch, and he called me his $1 million housewife.
Oh, yes.
And I was like, that sounds like the name of a course.
Oh yeah. You're like, did you just name my next course?
So anyways, yeah, we're loving it, and I want everyone to have this. And one of the things that we decided literally from our very first date, like on our first date, we read our lists to each other, like our dream partner list. And I had shared one of the things on my list was like, our relationship is evidence of what's possible for other people. Like that's what I want to create.
Aww.
And so it's the highest compliment when people share that reflection, which you just did. So thank you for that. But one of the other things I really love about you is you're very clear on what you desire. And just because of that clarity, you're not like closed off from love and connection. And I remember when we first met, you had just ended a relationship with someone. I'd love if you could share a little bit about that with our listeners.
I affectionately called him my executive country boo, and because he was the representation of things that really were important to me. A big life epic creator in the material world, and then from Oklahoma. I had the sweetest little country boy heart, but also went to Harvard. It was just like all the best things. I'm from the country, so I love that. So essentially I met a man. We had insane chemistry. We met on an app, and when we met each other, we're like, what are we going to do about this? Because we have different life visions. He's raising 2 children, had a vasectomy, and I have a burning desire in my womb called procreate. And so we weren't a long-term fit, but what we did was like, I was like, you know what? I want to love you. I definitely want to fuck you.
Oh.
And how could I do this in a safe way? Like, I understand this can't be something I open my heart to all the time, like as a sensitive being, but like, this was a right thing for me. So I sat with it and I was like, you know what? We could put a time constraint. Like, I just want to love you for Q4 2022. So October, November, December, we had each other through Halloween, we made Thanksgiving together. We did Christmas together. We did gifts. We did the whole thing. And then we had a completion ritual by the end of the year. Wow. So I could go into the year really clear about my person. And we had the most beautiful, epic lovership ever. I will always be tickled, and it will bring a smile to my face for as long as I'm on the planet, thinking about him and the love we shared and what we created. And the fact that I got to receive him in such a beautiful, mature way, even though he wasn't my forever person, like, I'm so happy that I was able to give that to myself.
Yeah. The ability to do that is like, that is such high vibe relating, you know? And I think that when I talk about high vibe relating, people think like, oh, this is really just for you and your person. But what I mean by high vibe relating is relating in a way that is radically responsible, that's growth oriented, that encourages sovereignty and soul expansion. And that's not exclusive to like our life partners. And to be able to receive that sort of soul contract that like just pops into your lap, and in my opinion, like, it sounds like spirit was like, there's something here for you that maybe is like preparing you for your divine partnership in a way, or at the very least is like deeply nourishing you, you know? And I'm curious, like, I feel like this has got to be like something that so many people would dream about being able to say yes to, but takes like a certain type of person or a certain perspective to say yes to. So I'm curious what it took for you to get curious about, okay, like, how could I make this work with this person? What factors would make this a right relationship for right now?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think about, it felt like one of those things, Leola, that I couldn't not say yes to.
Yeah.
Everything in me was like, I want him. I wanted him. He was strong and caring and fascinated by me. And what I notice that turns me on a lot, it's probably the same thing with you, let me know, is when my range gets so big.
Yeah.
I'm like, my self-expression and who I get to be. And he loved my witch and he loved my sensitive one. And like, all parts of me got to be loved with him. And I'd also never really been intimate with a dad before. Oh. That'd always been like a pretty off limits thing for me, just like no kids. Because I know I want my own kids. So I don't want to fall in love with your kids, because now this gets complicated.
For sure.
So he had like daddy energy, which I really loved. It was very healing for my little girl. And he was also an incredibly strong alpha.
Yeah.
And so the polarity in the bedroom and where we were able to go sexually and how I could open to him, it's like that would have only ever happened if I felt safe with him. And he was a truly advanced being that created a lot of safety. And he's also like not in our world and didn't even know how advanced he was, which is also kind of hot.
Yeah.
Like hadn't necessarily practiced it. It was just a part of him.
Yeah. It's a natural.
A natural. Yeah.
And it sounds like this was a unique relationship in a way and was healing and maybe encoded or made you familiar with something that you might want in a future partner. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even he helped me get even more clear into what the dynamic is. And yeah, it was interesting to have something feel so close. And my friends were like, Jolie, maybe your path is to be a stepmom. Like maybe say yes to this, because he was not budging around the kids thing.
Yeah.
He did not want more kids.
That's huge.
He was a for sure no about it. And I was a for sure no about not being pregnant. Like that wasn't going to work for me. So it was like very clear from the beginning that this couldn't be a long-term fit.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think that it was healing for me to be able to receive him so big, because a part of me knew that it wasn't forever. So it was like, how can we live this up?
Yeah.
And I feel like I trusted that he came into my path to be a building block. And my love, my husband, my person does not feel far off. It feels like just around the corner. And things keep happening in my life where I'm like, oh, I really get why I needed to be single for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a lot of that too. That understanding of like, yep, this is why the timeline was what it was. And I also knew when it was coming. It was like Q3, it's happening. I felt it in my bones. And 2 weeks into Q3, man, when I started dating, it's so crazy. So I think that this is really powerful in understanding that what do you need to make a lifetime commitment work? Vision is a really important piece. And it's something that so often we're sacrificing. To me, it's like love is not enough. Vision and also having like a shared perspective and like certain tools, or at least the willingness to find the tools to handle differences in conflict resolution. Like those are the pieces to have a relationship of longevity. But this piece on vision is really tricky because many people, when vision isn't in alignment, they either sacrifice their vision or they sacrifice the potential relationship. And you created a both and, which is really fucking cool. And I think that that's like such a lesson for people that are listening, whether they have the potential to meet someone now in this way and find that both and, or maybe they're with someone right now and they're sacrificing their vision and they get to renegotiate the terms and maybe put a time limit on it, So I love that
ended up working perfectly for me, and the ending was hard. I was probably sad about it. I was like, I miss my boo, but it wasn't gonna get easier. If we had gone into month 4, 5, and 6, the anxiety around knowing that I was opening my heart to somebody who wasn't my forever person would have stopped. The magic would have stopped anyway.
Yeah. So there was like a very clear point of like you would lose the return after 3 months.
Even towards the end, I started getting more anxious every time we were in lovemaking. I was like, okay, I'm reaching my capacity with you. Like, this needs to come into a natural close because I want that kind of union with someone who's going to procreate with me.
Yeah. When I was in my solo poly chapter, I would feel that too. Like as fun as poly can be and as expansive as it can be, like you're expanding in one direction. Whereas when you're with a partner that you're like going to be with for your entire life, you're expanding in a completely different direction. It's a completely different type of expansion. So with my lovers that I knew were like, I loved them, but it was like our visions were not the same because I wanted, lifetime partnership. It was like, we could only go so deep in some ways. And And that's like a really beautiful thing about when you do find the person, like you get to explore different shades, which is really fun. Mm-hmm. And with that ending, so it sounds like it was a little crunchy, painful in a way, which is what it is. Like the more you open yourself up to love, you're inversely opening yourself up to pain. I think that's something to be said for if you do decide to try something like this. It doesn't simplify and remove all feelings from the equation. You still get to experience all of that, but
yeah, but there's a difference, right? Because pain I experienced, I was sad because I missed him, but there was not suffering because everything was organized in the right place.
Yeah,
I knew he loved me. I knew we shared the same commitment. I knew what we were and I knew what we weren't. And so I was actually able to grieve pretty quickly and move on with my life and, you know, go on some other really cool dates. And he just set the bar incredibly high, which is good because it really filtered out a lot of like probably very boring dinner dates I would be on.
Yeah, I feel you. And I'm happy that you had that experience. And I'm so grateful that we get to like talk about it here and share that like way of relating with others. I'm feeling like, you know, we can naturally sort of begin to close with this. But I'm curious if you have anything else you want to add or speak into on this topic where
I'd love to just speak directly to whoever's listening to this right now is just may this conversation serve as permission. You know, sometimes life presents us things where it feels like a predicament. Like, how can I say yes to this? And I feel like what Leola's inviting in asking me this and why she wanted to weave this into the conversation is to just give examples of non-traditional relating styles that you maybe have never heard before. I've never heard of somebody falling in love and being absolutely madly in love and introducing somebody to all their friends and having Christmas together in a 3-month lovership that you knew was going to end. I mean, people, my friends trying to wrap their heads around this, they're like, wait, hold on. So you know the relation, you have a planned ending? I'm like, yeah, it's December 31st, 2022. They couldn't believe it. And I'm like, I'm over here like just receiving what life brought to me. And so yours may look completely different, but the point and the moral of the story is choose what feels good to you. And even if it doesn't fit within the societal constraints or what relationship norms are, if you're honoring yourself and listening from within and saying yes to the things that life brings you, even if it doesn't make sense, the only one it has to make sense to is you.
Yeah. And this goes it expands even beyond this relating piece, like this aspect of meeting the world in a curious way that is in some ways non-traditional. There's a saying in the self-help world around like, if it's not a fuck yes, then it's a fuck no. And it's like, not really at the end of the day. Like if you're not a fuck yes to something, like why? Like being curious about where is that coming from? And is there a solution that you can lean into? And to me, it was like, you were like, I'm not a fuck yes to this man for the rest of my life, but where is the yes that I can lean into to receive the gift that the universe is trying to give me? And where else maybe is the universe wanting to give you a gift to receive and you're contracting or closing because it doesn't look exactly how you thought it would. And I think that relates to our own journeys with, you know, healing our sexuality, healing our relationship to money, healing our relationship to sisterhood. All of those like crunchy moments ended up being portals into or redirections into purpose and greater love and connection. And that's fucking cool. So yeah.
Thanks for seeing me, Leola.
Yeah. And thank you for being here. And thank you to the listener for tuning in. And we'll catch you next week on Talk Tantra to Me. Ta-ta.